The morning began like any other in the quiet countryside, but everything changed that moment. Ethan Carter's dog, Molly, bolted toward the woods behind the farmhouse. Ethan had lived there for years, long after his wife passed away and his daughter moved away for college. The woods were his refuge, the one place where memories didn't hurt quite as sharply. Molly was his loyal companion, a dog he rescued from a shelter after losing everything that once made his world feel whole. But that morning, Molly wasn't her usual calm self. The wind whispered restlessly, the forest floor crackled under her rushing paws, and she barked with an urgency Ethan had never heard before. Her frantic cries echoed off the trees, sharp and desperate, pulling him into the shadows like something was begging to be found. When Ethan finally reached her, gasping for air and clutching his aching chest, he saw her standing in front of an enormous old tree. Moss covered its twisted bark, and thick roots clawed into the ground like ancient fingers gripping secrets. But it wasn't the tree itself that froze Ethan in place. It was the strange lump embedded deep in the trunk, an unnatural bulge, smooth in some places, jagged in others, as if the tree had grown around something that should never have been there. Molly barked again, and the forest seemed to hold its breath. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of doing what's right even when no one's watching, please take a second to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support truly helps stories like these reach hearts all around the world. Ethan stepped closer, feeling a chill crawl up his spine. He could tell instantly that this wasn't a natural part of the tree. It was too symmetrical, too hollow, too intentional. He ran his hand along the bark, and a piece crumbled off, revealing a faint glimmer beneath. His stomach tightened, fear mixed with curiosity. That old tree had stood there long before he moved into the farmhouse, long before Molly was even born. Who had been here before him? What secrets were buried in these woods? He forced himself to stay steady, but something in the air felt wrong. Birds had gone silent, the wind had stopped. It felt like the entire forest was waiting for whatever came next. Unsure of what he was dealing with, Ethan called the police, his mind racing with wild thoughts. He remembered hearing old stories from the local stories about missing hikers, strange noises at night, and objects hidden in hollow trunks by people running from something. But Ethan never believed them. Life had already taken so much from him that he didn't have room for legends or ghost stories. He only believed in what he could see and touch. And now, right in front of him, something was staring back from inside the tree, demanding to be revealed. When the police arrived, their expressions shifted immediately from casual to tense. They circled the tree, inspected the strange lump, and exchanged uneasy glances. Even the officers, hardened by years of strange calls and emergencies, looked unsettled. The chief ordered his team to cut open the tree. Ethan stood back with Molly pressed against his leg, both of them trembling. The first slice of the chainsaw pierced the silence, sending a shiver through the forest. Bark splintered, sap oozed, and wood dust filled the air. With every inch carved away, the shape inside grew more defined, more real, and more horrifying. Ethan's breath quickened as something metallic appeared beneath the layers of bark. The officers worked carefully, peeling away the tree's secrets one cut at a time. It felt like the world had slowed to a painful crawl. Then came the moment that made every person freeze. An object finally emerged from the hollow cavity. It was a small rusted metal box, wrapped in layers of cloth that had fused with the tree over time. The cloth was tattered but carried an unmistakable pattern that made the chief stop immediately and signal his team. Ethan's heart pounded. He could feel the weight of something important, something tragic, something deeply human buried there for years. The chief gently lifted the box out. The forest remained still. Everyone braced for what they were about to see. When they opened the box, the world seemed to tilt. Inside were items no one expected: a tiny pair of baby shoes, a silver locket with dried petals inside, and a stack of old letters stained with tears and rain. Ethan's vision blurred. He felt an ache inside him he hadn't felt since the day he lost his wife. Molly whined softly as if sensing his pain. The officers stepped aside, letting Ethan approach. Something about that box called to him, like it had been waiting for him specifically. The chief carefully unfolded one of the letters. The handwriting was shaky, but filled with love and desperation. The words revealed the story of a young woman who had once lived near these woods decades ago. She had fallen in love with a soldier who promised to return, but war took him away, and she was left alone, pregnant, heartbroken, and terrified of a world that never gave her a chance. The letters were her confessions to the unborn child she carried, a child she wanted to protect, but didn't know how to raise on her own. Each letter carried more pain, more fear, more guilt, more longing. She wrote about hiding the baby's shoes and locket as symbols of the family she never got to have, burying them in the tree when life pushed her to the edge. A final letter revealed her plan to leave town and start over somewhere far away, but no one ever heard from her again. The chief's voice trembled as he read her words, and Ethan felt tears burning in his eyes. As he listened, Ethan felt an unexpected connection to that broken woman he had never met. Her loneliness mirrored his own. Her longing for a family reflected the dreams he once had but lost too soon. He thought about the nights he stayed awake, holding on to memories of his wife, wondering if he'd failed her somehow. He thought about the silent dinners, the unfinished stories, the empty chair across the table. He had spent years believing he was the only one carrying such unbearable grief. But now, standing before that ancient tree, he realized grief had lived here long before him. This forest had swallowed someone else's pain, guarded it, and kept it hidden from the world until fate, through Molly, revealed it again. A strange wave of responsibility came over him. He felt like he owed that woman something. She had carried her story alone for too long. Her final act of hiding those precious belongings in a tree was a cry for help that no one heard. Ethan couldn't let her memory fade into the soil without acknowledgement. The investigation continued, and the chief promised to look deeper into who the woman was, what happened to her, and whether her child had ever been born or survived somewhere. As the officers packed up the evidence, Ethan remained by the tree, brushing his hand over its rough surface. He felt the deep grooves and scars left by time, storms, animals, and the weight of the secret it carried. He imagined the woman standing there years ago, alone in the dark, pressing the box in the hollow, praying no one would find it until someone who cared enough came along. He wondered what her life was like, what she feared, who she loved, whether she ever had someone to hold her through the worst nights. The idea that she might have died without anyone knowing her truth broke something inside him. His grief connected with hers, forming a strange, invisible bond across time. Days passed, and Ethan found himself returning to the tree every morning. Molly sat beside him faithfully, tail still, eyes alert, as though she too felt the significance of what they had uncovered. Ethan began cleaning the area around the tree, removing fallen branches and trimming away brush. It became a ritual that slowly brought calm back into his life. One morning, the chief returned with news that made Ethan's heart stop. They had identified the woman. Her name was Grace Lynn Walker. She had vanished in 1973 without a trace. Locals had assumed she ran away, but no one ever knew why. Even more shocking, records showed she gave birth to a baby girl before she disappeared. That child, according to the documents, had been placed in foster care. For decades, no one claimed to know what happened to Grace. Her daughter, now in her 40s, lived in another state, unaware of the truth buried in this forest. The chief said they were trying to contact her. Ethan felt a storm of emotions: hope, sorrow, relief. He wanted her to know her mother's story. He wanted her to feel the love hidden in those letters. And at the same time, he feared how painful it might be for her to learn the truth after all these years. But truth, Ethan believed, was better than silence. As days turned into weeks, Ethan began writing a letter of his own, not to Grace's daughter, but to Grace herself. He poured out his thoughts, his regrets, his memories, and the empathy he wished he could have offered her back when she was alive. He wrote about Molly, about how her instinct had revealed a hidden piece of history. He wrote about how he understood her fears, how he respected her strength, and how he wished she had found peace before fate took her away. Writing those words healed a part of Ethan he didn't know was still broken. His loneliness began to feel less suffocating, as though acknowledging someone else's pain softened his own. One crisp afternoon, as Ethan sat near the tree rereading his letter, he heard footsteps on the forest path. A woman approached, her eyes red, her hands trembling. She had the same soft brown hair described in Grace's letters, the same gentle gaze. The chief followed behind her, guiding her forward. Ethan realized instantly who she was. Grace's daughter had come. She held the rusted box tightly against her chest, close to her heart. She knelt by the tree, tracing her fingers along the bark, tears falling silently, as though she could feel her mother's presence in every curve of the wood. Ethan didn't say anything. He simply stood beside her, giving her the silent support she needed. She read the letters one by one, breaking down when she reached the last, where Grace wrote about her fear of being unfit, but still wanting her child to have a life better than hers. It was a moment that tied past and present together, healing a wound that had been bleeding for decades. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like, comment, and share, because your engagement helps keep emotional stories like this alive. As Grace's daughter cried beside the tree, Ethan gently placed his own letter next to the box, hoping she might read it someday and understand how deeply her mother's story had affected him. He whispered a quiet promise in his heart to protect the tree and everything it represented. Before leaving, the woman looked up at Ethan with gratitude so raw it pierced through him like sunlight after a storm. She said nothing, but he could feel the weight of her thanks. As she walked away, Ethan felt a strange warmth in his chest. It wasn't happiness exactly, but it was something close, something lighter than grief, stronger than sorrow, and more healing than silence. Please comment below with one thing this story made you feel before you go. Ethan returned to the old tree with Molly at his side. The wind rustled gently through the leaves as if echoing the whispers of all the secrets it held. Ethan placed his hand on the bark one last time and closed his eyes. For the first time in years, he felt like he wasn't alone. The forest had shared its story, and in doing so, had helped him rediscover his own strength. As he walked back home with Molly trotting happily beside him, the woods didn't feel haunted anymore. They felt alive, forgiving, and full of second chances.